On Maple Street in suburban Ohio, a modest white single-family house glowed under the soft autumn afternoon sunlight. Pumpkin decorations lined the porch, signaling the approach of Halloween. Inside lived Rachel Harrison, a woman who cherished quiet, predictable routines more than anything else. That afternoon, she had just returned from the pharmacy where she worked part-time. And as usual, she was preparing to pick up her 8-year-old daughter, Sophia, from school. Her husband, David, would return home from his IT department job around 6:00 p.m. The pattern of their lives was simple but comforting. Rachel had been married to David for 3 years, and only recently had she begun to feel that this life-quiet dinners shared responsibilities. Evenings filled with laughter was her new normal. Her journey to this point had been far from smooth. Rachel's first husband, Michael, had been her college sweetheart. They married after graduation, and for a time, life seemed secure. But when Sophia was only 5 years old, everything shattered. Michael died suddenly in a traffic accident, his car struck head-on by another vehicle that had skidded on a rain-soaked highway. Rachel still remembered the sterile hospital room, the doctor's heavy words, and the crushing silence afterward. Overnight, she was a widow with a young daughter to raise alone. The next 2 years tested every part of her. She juggled long hours at the pharmacy with endless household chores and sleepless nights caring for Sophia. Money was scarce, and the emotional weight of loneliness pressed harder than she expected. Every fever, every school form, every bill was hers alone to manage. She was near her breaking point when she met David Harrison. It happened at an orientation at Sophia's elementary school. Rachel had gone alone, tired, but determined when a man with calm eyes and a gentle smile introduced himself. David worked in IT at a large local company and carried himself with quiet confidence. He had been divorced for some years, childless, but he told Rachel that meeting Sophia stirred something in him. He wanted to be a father. He wanted to protect them both. When he eventually proposed with those very words, "I want to protect you and your daughter," Rachel felt as if her heart had been given back to her. She had forgotten what it meant to rely on someone, and Sophia, too, warmed quickly to him. She began to call him Papa David, her small voice filled with affection. Their wedding was intimate, held in a small church, with only relatives and close friends. David's mother, Margaret, welcomed Rachel and Sophia with open arms, her tears of joy spilling as she embraced them both. "I finally have a real daughter and granddaughter," she said, and the words carved themselves into Rachel's memory. Life as a new family began on a hopeful note. David proved himself thoughtful and dependable, helping with finances, sharing housework, and showing up for Sophia's school events with pride. Other parents often remarked what a lovely family they seemed, and for Sophia, David filled the role of an ideal father figure. He took her to amusement parks, cheered for her at school, and lavished her with gifts, a doll one week, a shiny electronic game the next. Whenever Sophia beamed and said, "Papa is so kind," Rachel felt a deep, grateful relief. But over time, faint cracks began to appear. Sophia, once cheerful, sometimes whispered that she didn't want to be alone with David. Rachel brushed it off as the natural struggle of adjusting to a stepfather, reassuring her that Papa loves you like his real daughter. Still, Sophia's face remained clouded, and she began to complain of stomach aches and headaches that no doctor could explain. It might be psychological, the pediatrician told Rachel gently. She wondered if her own busy work schedule was placing too much stress on her daughter. David, ever attentive, suggested she reduce her hours to spend more time with Sophia. To Rachel, his concern was only further proof of his devotion. Life continued in a strange balance. Their dinners were warm, their evenings peaceful, and on weekends, David was often the doting father, taking Sophia on outings, while Rachel worked morning shifts. When they returned from the amusement park one Saturday, Sophia gushed about roller coasters and proudly announced she had been brave because David held her hand. Rachel had been touched, her heart swelling at the sight of the photos David had taken of them, smiling beneath the Ferris wheel. Yet that same night, when Rachel checked on her daughter, Sophia lay curled in bed, whispering that she wanted to sleep alone. Her voice trembled, her face uneasy. Rachel kissed her forehead and promised she was safe, but the unease lingered. At school sports day, David's cheers echoed above the crowd, his laughter loud as he ran beside Sophia in the parent-child race. Other mothers looked on admiringly. Later at dinner, in a family restaurant, David sat close to Sophia, listening to her stories with careful attention. Rachel wished the happiness of that scene could last forever. But that evening, Sophia clung tightly to her mother's side, asking if the next weekend they could go shopping alone. "Just us girls," she insisted, her small hands gripping Rachel's tightly. Rachel agreed, though she couldn't help but wonder why her daughter resisted time with her father. As November approached, Sophia's 9th birthday was drawing near. David planned a grand surprise, reserving an expensive doll set and decorating the living room with balloons and banners. When Sophia returned from school to see the bright colors, her expression lit up but quickly dimmed. "It's beautiful." "Thank you, Papa," she said softly, before retreating to her room with the excuse of homework. That night, Rachel found her daughter hidden in the closet, clutching her knees. "Practicing hide-and-seek," Sophia murmured with a forced smile. "Maybe we'll play tomorrow." She then wrapped her arms around her mother's neck and whispered, "Will you always stay with me, Rachel?" Heart aching, promised she always would. The next afternoon, while Rachel worked a quiet shift at the pharmacy, her phone rang with a call from the Ohio State Police. At first, her heart seized with terror, imagining an accident. But the officer's words were stranger than anything she could grasp. Her daughter was safe, but she had run to the police station with the school nurse. She was asking them to arrest her father. Rachel's hands trembled as she gripped the phone, her mind unable to comprehend what she was hearing. Rachel sped to the police station, her heart thundering so violently she could hardly grip the steering wheel. She had been told her daughter was safe, but the words asking us to arrest her father kept echoing in her mind like a nightmare she could not wake from. When she arrived, a receptionist guided her to a small waiting room where Sophia sat wrapped in a pink blanket beside a female officer. Her little face looked pale, her eyes fixed on the floor, as though she carried the weight of something far beyond her years. Rachel rushed to her side, hugging her tightly. "Are you hurt?" "What happened?" she asked, her voice breaking. Sophia trembled against her chest and whispered, "Mama, I'm sorry. I couldn't bear it anymore. I was so scared." The female officer introduced herself as Maria Rodriguez and gently explained that Sophia had gone to the school nurse complaining of stomach pains. The nurse, Mrs. Wilson, had seen her often in recent weeks and finally asked if something deeper was troubling her. When Sophia confided, Mrs. Wilson made the swift decision to bring her to the police. Rachel's chest tightened as she realized her daughter had been carrying a secret for weeks, perhaps longer, one so painful she could no longer hold it inside. Moments later, Detective Thompson entered the room carrying a brown envelope. His expression was grave. He asked Rachel to follow him into a separate office, warning her that what he was about to show her would be shocking. Rachel sat stiffly in the chair, her pulse loud in her ears. From the envelope, he pulled out a small black object, a micro camera. "This was hidden in a stuffed animal in your daughter's room," he explained. Then he laid down a series of printed photographs, their images pulled from David's computer. Rachel's breath caught in her throat. The photos showed Sophia changing clothes, stepping out of the bath, caught in vulnerable moments no child should ever be subjected to. Rachel collapsed to her knees, the room spinning around her. "No," No, this isn't real. She choked out tears flooding her face. The detective's voice was steady but heavy. I'm afraid it is, ma'am. And there's evidence of direct contact as well. From the other room, Rachel could faintly hear her daughter's trembling voice as she told Officer Rodriguez fragments of her ordeal. When Mama wasn't there, Papa would watch me. He said it was our secret. He said if I told Mama, it would make her sad. At first, I thought he was kind, but then I was scared. Rachel could not listen any longer. She rushed into the waiting room, holding her daughter close, sobbing into her hair. I'm so sorry, Sophia. Mama didn't see. Mama couldn't protect you. The officers assured her it was not her fault. Perpetrators act cunningly, Rodriguez said gently. They manipulate trust and isolate their victims. The important thing is that Sophia was brave enough to tell the truth now. Before Rachel could gather herself, voices rose in the station's front hall. David's voice, sharp and desperate, called her name. A moment later, he was dragged in, wearing handcuffs, shouting protests. Rachel, this is a mistake. I love Sophia like my real daughter. For the first time since she met him, Rachel shouted back, her voice filled with rage. Be quiet. What did you do to my daughter? His face shifted, the calm mask falling away, to reveal a coldness that made Rachel's blood run cold. You wouldn't understand, he said bitterly. That child is special. Only I understand her true value. In that instant, Rachel realized the truth: he had never loved her. His devotion, his generosity, his tender smiles had all been a disguise. His obsession had been Sophia all along. The 3 years she had believed in him were nothing more than a carefully constructed lie. Sophia cowered behind her mother, whispering, Mama, he won't come anymore, right? He'll never come again. Rachel hugged her fiercely. No one will ever hurt you again. I promise. As David was led away for interrogation, Rachel and Sophia remained at the station. The minutes dragged on until Detective Thompson returned, his face graver than before. Mrs. Harrison, we've uncovered additional information. This case is larger than we thought. After reviewing his computer and phone, it appears David had similar incidents in other states. He deliberately targeted single mothers with young children. He had even researched your background before approaching you. He knew about your late husband's insurance settlement and your financial stability. Rachel felt faint, her stomach twisting, as the reality settled in. They had been chosen, stalked, ensnared in a trap laid long before she ever said yes to his gentle smile. Just then, Margaret burst into the waiting room, her face pale, clutching her handbag like a lifeline. Rachel, Sophia, she gasped, rushing to them. I came as soon as I heard. I can't believe this. I never imagined. Her voice broke as she knelt before Sophia. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. Grandma couldn't stop him. I should have seen. Rachel searched her eyes, trying to reconcile the woman who had welcomed them with warmth and the fact that her son had been hiding such a monstrous truth. Margaret admitted through tears that she had seen troubling signs years ago, strange behaviors, obsessions with children, but she had believed counseling had cured him. I turned a blind eye, she whispered, her shoulders shaking. I never thought he would harm Sophia, the child I loved like my own granddaughter. From down the hall, David's voice rang out again, furious and defiant. Call my lawyer. I didn't do anything wrong. I just loved her. Sophia clutched her mother's sleeve, burying her face. Mama, his voice scares me. Rachel held her tightly, her own fury rising. It's over. He'll never touch you again. Detective Thompson assured her that David would face multiple felony charges, child sexual abuse, voyeurism, and more. Bail was unlikely, and a restraining order would be put in place regardless. A child services worker named Sarah Mitchell, arrived soon after, kneeling gently to Sophia's level. "You were so brave today," she told her softly. "Because you spoke up, you're safe now. And you may have saved other children too." That night, Rachel knew she could not return to their house. The walls she once thought safe now felt poisoned. Margaret offered immediately, "Stay with me. My home has nothing to do with David. I can't forgive my son for this, but I still want to be your family. You and Sophia are my real daughter and granddaughter now." Tears welled in Rachel's eyes. After all that had been stolen from her, she still had someone who chose to stand beside her. Rachel and Sophia left the police station with Margaret that night, exhaustion weighing on them more heavily than any sleepless evening ever had. As Margaret drove them to her home, the world outside the car windows seemed surreal, like a fragile dreamscape. Streetlights blurred through Sophia's tears as she lay curled against her mother's side in the back seat. Margaret's voice broke the silence. "Rachel, I know I can't erase what my son has done, but please believe me when I say my home is yours. You and Sophia are safe with me." Rachel turned to her, her own voice low but steady. "It's not your fault. You were deceived too." But Margaret shook her head, her knuckles tightening on the steering wheel. "A mother should see. I should have seen what he truly was." From the back, Sophia's small voice piped up, hesitant but warm. "Grandma is kind. Grandma is real family." Margaret's tears slipped silently down her cheeks, her heart pierced by her granddaughter's forgiveness. At Margaret's house, Rachel settled Sophia into the guest room, where for the first time in months the child slept soundly. Rachel sat awake in the dark, her mind replaying every moment of the past 3 years, trying to reconcile the man she thought she had married with the predator he had turned out to be. She remembered his careful planning, his thoughtful gestures, the way he always seemed to anticipate her needs. Now she saw those moments not as love, but as strategy, each kindness designed to lower her guard, to position him closer to Sophia. Rage and grief coiled together in her chest until she could hardly breathe. But when she looked over at her daughter's sleeping face, peaceful at last, she knew her pain was secondary. Her only task was to protect Sophia now, whatever it took. Over the following weeks, life was turned upside down. Detectives revealed more layers of David's crimes. His computer contained images of children from other states, clear evidence of patterns stretching back more than a decade. The FBI joined the investigation, tracing his movements, uncovering identities he had hidden under false names. He had deliberately sought out women like Rachel, single mothers, grieving or struggling, knowing they longed for stability and protection. Rachel listened numbly as investigators explained how methodical he had been. "He chose you because you had a daughter and financial security," Detective Thompson told her quietly. The words cut deeper than any knife. She and Sophia had been nothing more than targets in his hunt. Margaret, too, was interviewed by the police. She admitted that years ago, as a teenager, David had exhibited troubling behaviors with neighborhood children. There had been counseling, reassurances, and eventually silence. She had convinced herself he had changed. "I wanted so badly to believe he was better," she confessed one evening to Rachel, her voice breaking. "I see now I was only protecting myself from the truth." Rachel listened, torn between anger and compassion. In her heart, she knew Margaret was also a victim of David's deception, trapped by the bond of blood she could not sever. Yet she also knew Margaret's willingness to stand by them now was a lifeline she could not do without. In the weeks that followed, Sophia began counseling with a gentle, experienced therapist named Dr. Payton. At first, the sessions were filled with silence and tears, but gradually Sophia's small voice grew stronger. She learned to put words to her fear and shame, to understand that none of it had been her fault. Still, the nights were the hardest. Rachel would wake to find her daughter screaming from nightmares, her tiny body drenched in sweat clutching at her mother, as though afraid she might disappear. Rachel held her close, whispering promises over and over. "You're safe. I'm here. I won't let anyone hurt you again." Meanwhile, the legal process began to unfold. David was charged with multiple felonies, child sexual abuse, voyeurism, possession of illegal images, and more. The evidence was overwhelming, the photographs damning. Rachel attended the pre-trial hearings, her stomach twisting each time she saw him brought in shackled, his eyes darting around the courtroom, still insisting on his innocence. "I just loved her," he said once during a heated outburst. Rachel felt bile rise in her throat at the twisted words. The mask of the gentle, dependable husband had crumbled, revealing only a monster who believed his obsession was love. Through it all, Margaret remained steadfast. She drove Rachel and Sophia to appointments, cooked warm meals, and sat quietly with them on evenings when the weight of it all was too much. "I cannot forgive my son," she said one night as she tucked Sophia into bed. "But I can love you. That is what I choose." Sophia clung to her tightly, whispering, "Grandma is my real family now." In those moments, Rachel felt a fragile hope stir. Perhaps from the ruins of betrayal, something new and genuine could be built. 6 months later, the trial reached its conclusion. David Harrison was found guilty on all counts. The judge's gavel echoed through the courtroom as the sentence was delivered: 15 years in prison, followed by lifetime registration as a sex offender. Past victims came forward during the proceedings, their stories weaving a tapestry of pain and deception that finally revealed the full scope of his crimes. Rachel sat through it all, her hands trembling, her heart aching, but her gaze fixed firmly on her daughter who sat beside Margaret. She endured the testimony, the evidence, the verdict, because she knew that facing the truth was the only way forward. When the trial ended, Rachel felt a strange emptiness. Justice had been done, but it did not erase the scars. Still, she knew it was a beginning. That evening, she and Sophia moved into a small apartment in a quiet town far from Maple Street. Cherry blossoms drifted past their window as they ate breakfast together, a new season unfolding. Sophia had begun to smile again, laughing with friends, her resilience shining through the cracks of trauma. Margaret visited every weekend, bringing warmth and stability that no court ruling could provide. Together, the three of them slowly began to stitch a new family out of love and choice, not blood or obligation. The new apartment was small, but to Rachel it felt like a sanctuary. The kitchen smelled of fresh coffee in the mornings, and the balcony overlooked a quiet street lined with cherry blossom trees. Each petal drifting on the breeze seemed to whisper renewal. 6 months had passed since the day everything shattered, and though scars remained, Rachel and Sophia were beginning to find a rhythm again. The nightmares had not disappeared entirely. Sophia still woke some nights, clutching her blanket afraid, but the screams were fewer now, softened by the steady support of counseling and the constant reassurance that she was safe. Rachel herself was rebuilding in ways she had not thought possible. Her part-time work at the pharmacy had become a full-time position, offering stability she desperately needed. She found comfort in the routines, sorting prescriptions, chatting with elderly regulars, taking short breaks with coworkers who treated her kindly. For so long, her identity had been overshadowed by tragedy and betrayal. Now she was beginning to feel her own strength, not just as Sophia's mother, but as a woman reclaiming her independence. Every Saturday, Margaret drove 2 hours to visit. She had lost her son in the most devastating way by learning the truth of what he really was, but she had gained something purer. Her love for Rachel and Sophia only deepened. When she arrived, Sophia would run into her arms with joy proudly showing her new schoolwork or the stuffed animals she had bought with saved allowance money. "Grandma, will you come to my school performance?" she asked one morning over breakfast. Margaret smiled, her eyes crinkling. "Of course, sweetheart. I'll cheer from the front row." In the afternoons, the three of them wandered through shopping malls, choosing new clothes, or simply walking hand in hand. When Sophia twirled in a bright yellow dress, declaring it made her feel energetic, Rachel's heart swelled. That smile, so bright and free, was proof that healing was possible. The journey was not finished, but it was real. Rachel made it a point to visit Mrs. Wilson, the school nurse who had first seen through Sophia's stomach aches and headaches. Together, she and Sophia thanked the woman who had made the crucial decision to take her to the police. "I only did my job," Mrs. Wilson said modestly, but her eyes shone with warmth. The real courage came from Sophia. She saved herself, and maybe others too. Those words lingered in Rachel's mind long after they left. Despite the progress, Rachel knew the weight of trauma would never vanish entirely. There were still moments when Sophia flinched at the sound of an angry male voice, or when she hesitated to go into the bathroom alone. But with every counseling session, every weekend with Margaret, every safe evening spent watching cartoons and eating popcorn, she was growing stronger. The fragile child who once hid in a closet was becoming a confident girl again, step by step. Rachel herself learned to forgive not David, never David, but herself. For months, she had carried the crushing guilt of not recognizing what was happening under her own roof. But therapy helped her see the truth. Predators thrive on deception, and her love and trust had been exploited. It was not her failure. It was his crime. The realization did not erase the pain, but it allowed her to breathe more freely, to hold Sophia without drowning in self-blame. When spring returned, they invited Margaret for dinner on the small apartment balcony. Sophia rested her head on her grandmother's lap, clutching a new stuffed animal, while Rachel poured coffee. The sky blushed pink with sunset, and for a moment, everything felt still. Margaret reached for Rachel's hand. "I'm truly happy to have met you," she said softly. "Even though terrible things happened, because of my son, you and Sophia are my real family." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "We feel the same. You taught us that blood doesn't define family, love does." Sophia looked up at both of them, her small voice steady. "We're a real family now." Rachel knew the past would never fully disappear. The betrayal, the courtroom, the nights of fear, they would always be part of their story. But they would not define it. What defined them now was resilience, courage, and love, chosen freely. As mother and daughter walked hand in hand beneath the cherry blossoms the next morning, Rachel reflected on what they had endured. A real family, she realized, was not built by names or appearances, but by bonds of trust, protection, and unwavering care. That truth was their shield and their hope for the future. If you were moved by this story, please like, share, and subscribe for more powerful real-life stories. And don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.